I got inspired about digital technology at a pretty young age. I think I was about 11 years old when I first checked out ZX81, which was my first sort of computer at home, and played video game for the first time. And my first job out of college was with a company called Wavefront that was working on 3D animation software. And the first product we created was called Maya. That was the first version of Maya 1.0. That was kind of really the early days of 3D computer graphics. It was actually back early in 1991, before I did all of this, that I had read my first book on virtual reality. And that was the Rheingold book. And it was kind of the early days of kind of the very first wave of VR. It was kind of in the zeitgeist back then already, and there was a lot of experimentation happening. A lot of science fiction novels were written, Neuromancer by William Gibson, and Snow Crash by Neil Stephenson. These were some of the sort of the classics that really kind of got people sort of thinking about this vision of the future. When the Palmer Luckey Kickstarter project happened, I was very aware of it because I had been interested in VR for some time. And we got access to a DK1, which was the first Oculus prototype of the Rift. And it was a turning point. All of a sudden we really realized that, oh my gosh, there is something very compelling about wearing a headset where you are fully immersed. You're now inside of the experience. With visual storytelling, as we've known it now for decades, you're fundamentally framed in a rectangle. The visual media is being presented to you in a rectangle that is out there, and you're looking at that rectangle, whether it's a giant screen in a movie theater, or your phone, or the TV in your living room. Here in VR, now you are inside of that frame. The frame itself is broken. The media is now wrapped around you 360 degrees. Now, for starters, you as the viewer, you have a choice. You can look around in whichever direction you want. And so right there, the director, who is typically very carefully selecting how you frame up a specific shot and how you cut from one shot to the next, well, that paradigm is different now. And on top of that, the medium is very powerful in that it's so powerful, in fact, that you can get sick. If you're inside of an experience that is not well designed and well crafted, it can cause nausea, because there's this cognitive sort of equilibrium you need to have between what you're visually being presented with and your movements. And so if you're standing there inside of a VR experience and all of a sudden you're in a car and the car is moving around and you're not, that causes cognitive dissonance. But one example which is quite interesting is that for a while the thinking was you can't move the camera in VR because it's going to make you sick. And so we were doing a shot where we mounted a camera on the front of a car, and we were driving through the streets of Venice where our studio was located. And sure enough, when you wore the headset, you immediately felt nausea. However, we then took that same camera and mounted it inside of the car, right on the dashboard, where now you're going through the exact same shot, but as a viewer looking forward, you can now see the framing of the windshield. And that slight shift is enough to remove the nausea. It's a psychological phenomenon called the cockpit effect, where your mind all of a sudden feels like you're inside of a vehicle, so it's okay if you're moving. So it's early days, lots of learning happening, and we're working with a variety of directors that are figuring out and discovering new stuff every day. There's no doubt that the demand for VR, for buying consumer headsets, is going to outstrip the supply. There's already pre-orders for the Oculus Rift. Same thing's going to happen with the Vive, no question. Very quickly exiting 2016, you're going to see that there's a real market that you can address and that you can provide content to. And the situation is that the hardware is ahead of the content today. The fact that you can have such a compelling experience at a price point that's affordable, that changes the equation entirely. So WEVR really is a virtual reality network. We're really thinking about how, one, we can make VR ourselves and understand the medium and actually figure out the nuance of what's involved and how to really express story and narrative and experiences in this new medium. In addition, we're sort of looking at how can we tap into this new emerging, burgeoning community of creatives that are really inspired by the new medium. Our thinking right now is to not limit it in any way to some specific category of content, but rather look at it as what is native to this medium? You know, what is a story or an experience that you couldn't have unless you were wearing a virtual reality headset? There's no question that VR is here to stay.